The NCR80 is essentially a modern clone of the Cherry G81 3077, but with some much needed adjustments. The original NCR keyboard was originally a rebranded Cherry G81 300 that came with the notoriously dogshit Cherry MI switches. From what I've read on Disclosure, there was a common PCB replacement that people would use on these keyboards to make them less shit and MX compatible. Most people would probably bin these, but keep the keycaps because they would come with OG Cherry double shots, as well as PBT die subs, but even then I can imagine a lot of these sadly got thrown away. This keyboard, the NCR80, is fairly priced, but doesn't include keycaps and switches. The cheapest kit option includes the top and bottom shell, a PCB, stabilizers, and a USB-C cable. What brings that price up is the hot swap and carbon fiber plate options. It's easier for you to just Google the item and find it in your own currency, as well as prices fluctuate and shipping will affect the total you have to spend. Considering this is built with a plastic case, and I chose to go with no plate, it is fairly rigid and has almost no flex. What probably helps the rigidity is that it is a 10 keyless design and has less room to flex like the original full-size versions. The LED indicators look cheaply done and probably are, but other than keyboards I have do this anyway, so whatever, I don't care. Flipping the keyboard over, you can see it has these stinky flip out feet that are very small and fragile. It's one of those feet that feel like snapping every time you move it, and even though I'll never use them because the angle is too high, it's disappointing that they aren't even rubber tipped like the original Cherry G80s are. They still have the rubber feet here at least. The case is held together with 6 screws, which is more than the originals generally were, because they were usually just held together with plastic clips. The screw sockets are even brass, which is better over plastic because they will break over time. With the keyboard now open here, you can see the PCB, and sadly it doesn't have inky rollover. They did however make the traces around the WASD cluster a little more compatible with gaming, but I'm naturally a little disappointed for the price I paid. The PCB does have flex cuts. The cuts don't physically flex much, but raw flex isn't the point. It's to provide a softer typing experience that typing on something more rigid wouldn't give, which yes, this PCB does do. The softer typing experience also gets complemented by the fact that I went with a plateless build over the carbon fiber option. Out of everywhere on the board, the spacebar is the most bouncy and was a little weird to get used to, but after the initial phase it grew on me. You can see mine is stepped caps, but the PCB also supports normal caps as well as ISO, if you're a weirdo. I don't have the hot swap PCB, so I can't comment on the layouts that one supports. I can't recommend to go with a plate or not, as it's always a preference, but there are a lot of typing tests on YouTube for you to see which you personally like and the experience you're looking for. A lot of people modded their keyboards in different ways, with foam and all that shit, so I really like how different people have made their personal build unique. I couldn't figure out the layers on this keyboard, except right alt seems to work like a function key, and if you hit the right control afterwards, you can turn the numlock on and off. Can I also mention the forehead? I like big foreheads. The switches I'm using in this build are Cherry Hyperglide Blacks with TX 45 gram springs, bag lubed with Krytox 206 grade 2. The spacebar has the original spring because I like it that way. I wanted to fit the G80 theme, so I went with Cherry Blacks because they were common on a lot of those boards. Black springs are too fucking heavy, so I replaced them with something I prefer for gaming over typing. The original springs had some ping, but I was really surprised when I swapped to the TX springs. And as a loose switch, they pinged more than any Cherry switch I've ever heard, and it was fucking insane. So to fix this issue, I obviously went ahead, bag lubed the springs to shut them the fuck up. I've seen a few comments out there saying that you can't bag lube with thick lube, but that's just wrong as it's literally what I did, as well as it saves a shit ton of time. The switches themselves are mostly smooth, but it's the slider contact with the leaf is what makes most friction noticeable. Since the switches are cherry, they obviously don't have any binding issues, they sound like they should, and they're nothing special at this point. This video isn't meant to be too much about the switches, so I'll stop here. The stock stabs it came with are clip-in, and they look kinda shit, but work pretty well, as in no problem with rattling or ticking with some lube, which I also use Krytox 206 grade 2. The biggest problem though was with the stab wire and the clip part. They have awful tolerances, and it's too tight, causing it to be more difficult to insert than it should be. This caused me to bend the spacebar and backspace wire. This only really fucked up the backspace, which has kind of fixed itself now, but isn't 100% as it should be. I would, however, 100% recommend buying some screw-in stabs. It's if you can afford them, but I don't think it's necessary if you can be more careful than I was, as well as this issue might have just been isolated to mine. And yes, I've lubed plenty of stabs before. The keycaps I chose for this are Hiragana Daisub PBT keycaps, and they're from KP Republic. The Daisub quality seems pretty good. I don't see any weird inconsistencies except for the question mark key, which might even be intentional. They are of decent thickness and the spacebar isn't warped. They are a little tight on switches though, but they haven't seemed to stretched. I went with these because no other keycap set seemed like it would look that great. If I had some OG cherry double shots, it would probably look nice as well. I do think a darker grey would have looked better, but I'm still really happy with this choice. If you're wanting a different layout, I don't know anything about flashing the board to fit that layout, because it works out of the box for me, so if you want to change it, you have to learn yourself. There is also apparently a problem with diodes that fall out of the PCB and go missing during shipping, so they have spares on the back. Again, mine was fine out of the box, so if you have issues, be aware to look into that. Check the description for more information about it. With all the potential problems I have mentioned, it might not be the best kit for a beginner, but if you have built a keyboard before, know how to flash, and are gentle, you'll probably be fine. No, I really like this keyboard and appreciate that there is still a market for that vintage aesthetic. There's even other colours with a cream beige top, which also looks pretty nice. And I might get another in the future with this colorway. Thanks for watching, hope you liked it. I'm gonna type on the keyboard now.